Regarding Trump's executive order, some federal politicians have encouraged Australia to follow in the steps of the United States. Some members of the Liberal Party and the Nationals, along with minor conservative parties such as One Nation, who have been pursuing the issue since before Trump's order. The Liberal Party leadership, however, has dismissed the order as divisive populism. The Greens described Trump as emboldening hate with it, and the Labor Prime Minister joined the Liberals in dismissing the order as a culture war that ordinary Australians, they say, aren't talking about and are not worried about. Some good news from Queensland. On the 28th of January, Queensland Health issued a directive to all hospitals and health services to halt Tanner Stage 1 and Stage 2 interventions, which is the prescription of any new puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones to children and adolescents under the age of 18. It's been described as a pause while a review of the evidence for the interventions is conducted. So this is great news. Existing prescriptions will continue, but no new ones will be given out while the review is conducted. Queensland was pushed to act in part because of the advocacy of Dr. Gillian Spencer, and in part by recent disclosures that children as young as 12 in the state have received puberty blockers and hormones, sometimes without proper medical support or even parental consent. Well-known federal politicians such as Matt Canavan, Senator for the Nationals, have spoken out in support. Canavan said, hopefully this becomes the template for nationwide action against the shocking abuse of children that has occurred. The major parties still either support medical gender interventions, which is Labor, or they're trying to dodge every question about the issue and sell the tagline that ordinary Australians aren't interested and that it's not a social issue outside of fringe groups, which is the Liberal Party's line. ABC coverage on the pause was slightly weighted towards AusPath being an expert medical body and a previous Queensland study finding no evidence of malpractice in prescribing, but it was somewhat balanced. It noted, for instance, that this previous study did not examine the evidence base for whether interventions ought to be prescribed at all. So the media coverage has been fairly informative for the public on this. So we're all very happy about the Queensland government's decision. That's all from Australia. Thank you.
I'll begin by sharing that our most recent live webinar, Combating the Exploitation of Women and Girls, hosted by our new anti-pornography working group, is now available for viewing on our YouTube channel. We've also just announced that our next live webinar, hosted by the Black Women's Caucus facilitator Lorraine Nolan, and in recognition of Black History Month, will take place on February 4th at 8:00 p.m. EST. The event is titled, How the Trans Lobby Co-opted the Struggle for Black American Civil Rights and How Radical Feminists of all races can work together to dispel this forced teaming, and will feature Irene Lawrence, Kara Dansky, Aja Lyons, and Lawrence Levy as panelists. I'll share a link that includes more details about the event, including the link to register in the chat. Last year, I spoke quite a bit about the efforts of Nassau County, New York officials to protect women and girls in athletics. The saga began in March with an executive order by County Executive Bruce Blakeman prohibiting male athletes from competing against girls at all sports facilities run by the county. The order immediately elicited legal challenges from New York State Attorney General Letitia James and New York Civil Liberties Union, the NYCLU. In June, the Nassau County Legislature passed a bill nearly identical to the original executive order, and in July, it was signed into law. The state and the NYCLU swiftly filed lawsuits against the legislation, citing New York's human rights law, which bans discrimination on the basis of gender identity. While the suit filed by the state is still pending, last week, Glenna Goldis reported that Long Island Judge Bruce Cozzens upheld the law in the challenge brought by the NYCLU on behalf of alleged women's roller derby team, the Roller Rebels, that includes a man named Bratzilla, who feels entitled to compete against women. The suit sought an immediate block of the law by filing a motion for a preliminary injunction, which the judge denied. In a 13-tweet thread, Goldis highlights key points of Judge Kazin's ruling, which include his assertion that men are stronger than women, that the law does not discriminate by gender identity, but rather by sex, which is legal, and takes issue with the fact that the team sought not only to include Bratzilla, but that his sex be kept secret, which creates an even greater risk to his female competitors. The NYCLU has already announced its intention to appeal. I'm pleased to report that on the 24th, the Department of Justice dismissed all charges against Dr. Eitenheim, who was surgical resident when he blew the whistle on Texas Children's Hospital after discovering the hospital had secretly continued medicalizing minors despite its public pledge to stop all hormone and surgical interventions on distressed children. The conduct he exposed in May of 2023 became illegal in the state of Texas within 24 hours of the publication of his then anonymous allegations. The 4-count felony indictment alleging that Heim obtained patient information under false pretenses and with intent to cause malicious harm to Texas Children's Hospital could have resulted in a 10-year prison sentence. On the 26th, Keep Prison Single Sex USA tweeted that the text of Representative Nancy Mace's single-sex housing bill has now been published. H.R. 10497, the Prison Rape Prevention Act of 2024, would amend Title 18 U.S. Code to ensure that a prisoner is housed and transported only among those of the same sex, and that the Bureau of Prisons may not furnish or pay for any gender-related medical treatment. Although Mace introduced the bill in advance of Trump's executive order on sex and gender identity, the organization claims this bill would largely serve to codify the EO in law, a necessary step to the limitations of federal executive authority. Interestingly, in her comprehensive analysis of what Trump's two sexes order means for sports, misgendering, prisons, gays, and more, published on the 26th, Glenna Goldis references a Daily Mail article which suggests that the Bureau of Prisons has already taken action to implement the EO. The piece provides quotes from an email a public defender sent to colleagues nationally on behalf of her client, a male inmate with a woman identity who claims that he, along with others at FCI Waseca, the low-security federal prison for women in Minnesota, have been segregated and told that they are being processed out to a transfer center and then to a men's prison, which is certainly encouraging information if accurate. It very well could be, as the Bureau of Prisons has reportedly notified trans-identified prisoners of impending changes. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
This week in New Zealand, the ruling National Party, which is in a coalition with New Zealand First and the ACT Party, they sort of did a reshuffle of some of their ministers, and so I was just looking at it to see if it's going to make any difference for women's sex-based rights. It probably doesn't look terribly different. In this coalition, the New Zealand First Party is the one which got some agreements in the coalition agreement which did support women's sex-based rights, but the other two parties haven't shown any interest in doing so. The changes that are interesting are the new sports minister is Mark Mitchell, and he's replacing Chris Bishop. Now, Chris Bishop was the one who dragged his heels for several months about implementing the coalition agreement about stopping funding to community sports if they wouldn't allow for single-sex sports, and he took ages to get around to it, but in the end, last October, he finally told Sports New Zealand that you need to change your guidelines. Sports New Zealand, they have had these transgender guidelines, so they now have to respect fairness for women, girls as a sex. So he finally did it, but now he's out, and we'll wait and see what Mark Mitchell is like. Now, in health, that's the other field that's interesting. We have a new health minister, Simeon Brown, replacing Dr. Shane Reti. Now, the big issue in the Ministry of Health for us gender critical feminists is the puberty blockers. And the Ministry of Health has also been dragging its heels about restricting puberty blockers. And their latest step has been to call for this public consultation about whether they should do it or not. I think Matt Ducey, who's the Associate Minister, was the main person responsible for their policies on puberty blockers, because he's also the Minister for Mental Health, and he's kept his positions. He was formerly worked for the Tavistock Clinic some years ago. I don't know if that influences his views. So we don't really know at this point if the new minister will make any difference or not, but we'll wait and see. We're still waiting to see what the Ministry of Health is going to do about puberty blockers. So yeah, that's it from New Zealand. Thank you.